I'm Gavin Plumley, and I've come to Austria in search of Gustav Mahler.
Mahler died 100 years ago this May. Compared with Beethoven, Mozart or Schubert, all Vienna residents, Mahler's output seems small, just focusing on the symphony and the song cycle. But like his predecessor's lengthy opus lists, Mahler's music embraces the whole world.
In short, Mahler's achievement was epic. So who was this Mahler? Where did he come from? And what does his music say to us today?
Following his student years in Vienna, Mahler became a conductor, taking jobs around Europe, including important posts in Budapest and Hamburg. He had terribly high standards and wanted to stamp out what he called Schlamperei, or slovenliness, wherever he went. Yet this determination took its toll, and every summer he would have to leave behind the opera house and escape out into the Austrian countryside. Here he focused his efforts on composition, the endeavour that was dearest to him. These breaks away to the light, air and space of the Attersee, and later the Wörthersee and the South Tyrol, became sacrosanct. It was an essential journey back into his music and his neuroses.
But in order to give himself the time and money to compose, Mahler had to work hard throughout the opera season. In 1897, after various jobs elsewhere, Mahler was appointed music director at Vienna's Imperial Opera House. After 5 months, he was made the director.
Mahler's arrival in Vienna coincided with the time in which many of the key ingredients of the fin de siècle were born. The advent of Mahler and the death of Johannes Brahms saw the birth of modernism occurring at the same time as the demise of old-school romanticism. Electric trams, the conveyance of the modern age, first appeared in the city, while the artistic motto of this changing metropolis was confirmed by the foundation of the Secession. One person who bridged the gap between Mahler's world at the Opera House and wider Viennese culture was Alma Schindler. She and Mahler met in November 1901. Alma was also a composer of note, having studied with Schoenberg's teacher and her former boyfriend Alexander Semlinsky. Despite her talent, Alma's relationship with Mahler started on a major compromise. Mahler told Alma that she had to give up music. Madly in love, she agreed, but by the summer of 1902, she was already complaining that she'd sunk to the level of a housekeeper. Alma nevertheless maintained the role of dutiful wife. Their first daughter Maria, nicknamed Putzi, was born in November 1902, and Anna followed in June 1904. Throughout this time, Mahler kept religiously to his retreats to the countryside for months of recuperation and composition. Bruised and beaten by continuing critical onslaught in Vienna, the time spent in his composing huts, like this one on the shores of the Attersee, proved to be a haven.
What Mahler created here weren't literal snapshots of nature, though the sounds of the countryside certainly found their way into his music. Mahler's symphonies are more about man's position within nature.
Whether it's in the lilting Ländler dances, the yodeling clarinets, or the whisper of birdsong, Mahler's music always turns its focus back on the individual, one person in the midst of all this space.
But that image of the lonely wanderer places Mahler's Weltanschauung, or world view, firmly in the 19th century. He's a romantic through and through, at least at first.
Like the great heroes of the Romantic imagination, pictured gazing across vast landscapes, Mahler tries to project himself and us, his audience, into that widening vista.
And although Mahler's first symphonies declare that message with great conviction, the grand celebration that ends the first symphony, the love song that ends the third, something begins to snag. The world around Mahler was beginning to change.
As the 19th century moved into the 20th, new questions were asked by Mahler's peers. Nietzsche's triumphant pessimism, the breaking down of psychological facades by Freud, and the shifting social and sexual mores of the time created a thrilling but impermanent backdrop to Mahler's music. Although Mahler's countryside escapes, including Here to Meinig, were an attempt to put distance between him and these issues, Mahler ultimately couldn't ignore them. His Fourth Symphony represents one last longing look back at that world of nature before it goes into freefall. The Fifth Symphony opens with a brutal funeral march, a burial of times gone by, perhaps. While more triumphant music lies ahead, Mahler cannot summon the energy to convince us of his beliefs, and the Sixth Symphony that follows depicts a brutal cataclysm.
Throughout this music, we hear the mountains yet again. Rallying horns sound across vast valley floors, and cowbells populate the percussion section. But all too often, it's stifled by aggressive and contrapuntal music. The world was changing, but Mahler was reluctant to change with it. His music may have been at the forefront of the new sounds coming out of Europe at that time, but his heart was here in the hills. He was, if you like, a revolutionary nostalgic.
After the nocturnal kaleidoscope of the Seventh, Mahler's Eighth Symphony, a monumental celebration of creativity, was a last-ditched attempt to unify the world. Massed choirs, organ and a vast orchestra trumpet Veni Creator Spiritus, come, create a spirit. But by Das Lied von der Erde, a nostalgic goodbye, and his ninth and incomplete 10th symphonies, all written in his new retreat at Toblach, that creative spirit pushes Mahler into more reflective territory.
The sound of the landscape started to disappear from the music Mahler wrote here in Toblach, and began to foreshadow the music of Schoenberg, Berg, and Weber. But unlike those avant-garde composers, Mahler was a reluctant 20th century man. Rather, he would have preferred to be left dreaming on the mountainside.
Up until now, I've been something of an armchair traveller. I've pulled down my Mahler CDs from the shelf and enjoyed the distant jangle of a cowbell or the faraway echo of the horns.
Never before had I been here to see where the music was composed. Now the world of Mahler is more alive to me than ever before. He was a romantic idealist whose music couldn't withstand the harsh light of the 20th century. In the seclusion of the mountains, he wrote the music for that new world. In Vienna, it was laughed to scorn.
But he left behind some of the most aching and humane testaments of that struggle ever conceived. Like the poet Robert Frost, Mahler took the road less travelled by. Come and do likewise. It will make all the difference to how you hear this incredible music.